Getting over it is frustrating. But if you have any familiarity with the game, that's probably not news to you.
No! No!
If you try to...
No! Oh, you piece of trash! No! Why?
Getting over it is frustrating because it's about frustration. The game features a man in a cauldron climbing a mountain of refuse using a Yosemite hammer, while Foddy's voiceover and narration plays in the background. The controls are deliberately awkward, making the climb difficult in itself, but even the slightest mistake can erase any and all progress the player has made. In the first of his voiceovers that play throughout the game, Foddy opens by listing a series of deeply frustrating situations.
There's no feeling more intense than starting over. If you deleted your homework the day before it was due, as I have, or if you left your wallet at home and you have to go back after spending an hour in the commute. If you won some money at the casino and then put all your winnings on red but it came up black. If you got your best shirt dry cleaned before a wedding and then immediately dropped food on it. If you won an argument with a friend and then later discovered that they just returned to their original view. Starting over is harder than starting up.
This sets the tone of the game and makes an implicit comparison between them and the game itself, telling us that we'll feel about the same way. It primes the player to expect that kind of intensely frustrating experience here. Though we're told here that the game is about frustration, Foddy doesn't really say much about it explicitly. But by making the game frustrating to play, it gives the player a safe space to explore the complexities of that emotion more deeply than they might have otherwise. And he immediately follows that list by telling us,
If you're not ready for that, like if you've already had a bad day, then what you're about to go through might be too much. Feel free to go away and come back. I'll be here.
Since it may be too intense at times, it's okay to step away. Having that room to step away is important for learning how to work through those emotions in a healthy way, and frustration has a way of forming a feedback cycle where we continue to get more and more frustrated with no way to release that emotional pressure. Recognizing when an emotion has built up to that point is an important part of managing it. But when he says this, and when he later says,
I'll understand if you have to take a break at any point. Just find a safe place to stop and quit the game. And don't worry, I'll save your progress, always.
It can bring a sense of relief, but also directs the player to recognize when the game has gotten to be too much, when that frustration has built up too much to continue. But he does this in a cheeky way.
Don't worry, I'll save your progress, always. Even your mistakes.
And there's a complexity to the emotional responses it might invoke. It's reassuring that at least you won't have to suffer frustration because of the game losing your progress, but that reassurance is backhanded in that that's not really the thing they're worried about here. It goads the player by reminding them that they're going to make mistakes and fail at the game, and the system will force you to confront that failure. But in that backhandedness, it's also kind of funny. This cheeky prod to rile you up is delivered as a joke, and in doing so, sets up the player to feel subtly different emotional valences at once. This is something Foddy has written about elsewhere, including his blog post, 11 Flavors of Frustration, where he outlines a list of different kinds of frustration he's seen in games, what the causes are of each kind, and the distinct ways each of them feel. There are a handful of ways he plays with different flavors of frustration and getting over it, but the one that's most apparent is the way it's often intertwined with humor. There's just so much absurdity in the game. Why is Diogenes wearing a cauldron? To protect his legs, of course. The voice lines that play when the player falls prod whatever frustration was sparked by the loss of progress, but they can also change the way that frustration is felt. I lost my shit when he read the quote,
Don't hate the player, hate the game. Ice-T.
because I found so much humor in the way he juxtaposed this not especially profound quote from a rap artist, often looked down on as low art, with the kind of highbrow authors most of us really only encounter in literature class. And it was a new experience for me, still seething with frustration at my fresh loss, but now also laughing uncontrollably, seeing the way I felt both emotions in tandem, and how they each changed the way I was feeling the other. Those voice lines also call the player's attention to whatever they're feeling. In a way, by prodding more intense response, they ask you to be more aware of that response. It's mostly subtle, calling attention by talking about the feeling it's trying to evoke, and making the feedback loop obvious. But one of the voice lines is more explicit about it.
Hang in there. Don't let it get to you. But also, let it get you a little bit.
That's the one that hits you over the head a little bit more, that all but tells you to pay attention if you aren't already. That kind of attention does a couple of things. On one hand, paying more attention to our emotions when they come up helps us deal with them. The space of that emotion becomes more recognizable, more familiar, and easier to navigate in the future. That's the whole idea behind mindfulness practices. When we try to suppress certain emotions we don't want to feel, they have a way of coming back up, stronger, more often. And getting over it is a space where we can safely explore that, in a way that's low stakes, and, as I mentioned earlier, we can easily step away from it if we need to. On the other hand, we can build more of an appreciation for frustration, a more refined palette of emotional flavors. Emotions aren't one-dimensional, and we have a safe space here to appreciate the complexities of frustration that tend to go unexamined in daily life. By interweaving commentaries on frustration and trash culture, there's an implication, too, that frustration is a trash emotion. Not that it's an emotion we should throw away, but that we often try to anyway.
I mean, they're trash in the way that food becomes trash as soon as you put it in the sink. Things are made to be consumed and used in a certain context, and once the moment is gone, they transform into garbage.
Culturally, we tend to pare down the context in which it's deemed acceptable to express frustration, so that there are fewer situations in which frustration is seen as a proper response, even when it's a necessary and an appropriate one. Likewise, in orthodox approaches to modern game design, frustration is usually seen as something to be avoided at all costs, as a mistake on the part of the designer. Don't get me wrong, a lot of the games that I play are better for their designers avoiding frustration because it doesn't fit the experience they're trying to achieve. But that isn't universally true for all games. Trying to completely rid ourselves of frustrating design cuts out part of our emotional palette, and we miss out on rich, complex experiences. That kind of view also limits the ways frustration gets used when it does fit. It's only something to contrast the satisfaction of winning.
An orange is sweet, juicy fruit locked inside a bitter peel. That's not how I feel about a challenge. I only want the bitterness. It's coffee. It's grapefruit. It's licorice.
Sometimes we enjoy a challenge for the satisfaction we get after overcoming it, but sometimes the challenge itself is what we're trying to consume. Rather than feeling accomplished when it's completed, sometimes it feels like when you finish a really good book or eat the last slice of cake. There's an emptiness there once it's been finished, and you want to turn back to just a few moments earlier, before you were through. The most interesting thing about this game is that it's designed around frustration for its own sake, to be appreciated on its own terms. As someone who enjoys eating black licorice, it tastes repugnant. Why do I still eat it? I don't know. I guess it's the spice of life or something. There's no pleasure in any sensations I get from eating it, so even trying to find the words to talk about it is difficult. I enjoy eating licorice, but I don't enjoy anything about eating licorice. Coming back to this game to record footage, I found myself getting just as much enjoyment out of the falls and failures as I did from actually making progress. And that's really the core of what getting over it is about. It's been a while since I learned how to enjoy feeling sad. since I started seeking out sad movies just so I could cry at the end. And I think it's about time I learned to do the same for frustration, instead of just managing it when it comes up on its own.